8 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, Arizona. The ranch house is already swallowed in black. A window shatters somewhere at the back of the house. Then the porch light goes out. Not a bulb dying. Something or someone turned it off. Tanya freezes. Her father tells her mother to run upstairs and stay hidden in Tanya's room. Her mother grips Tanya's arm, pulling her back from the railing. Her father takes a vantage position, not scrambling. A man who has run this exact sequence in his head 1,000 times, waiting for the night it would stop being a drill. "You've made a mistake. You shouldn't have come here," he says low, almost calm, to whoever is standing on the other side of the door. Silence answers him. Then, footsteps. Slow and unhurried, like a man with nowhere to be. The house goes still in a way that's worse than noise. Her mother's hand slips off Tanya's arm. She's already moving toward the stairs before Tanya can stop her. "Mom!" She doesn't stop. Downstairs, the front door has stopped being a door at all. Her mother reaches the bottom step. The footsteps stop. There's a pause long enough that Tanya lets herself hope. Then a sound she will spend years trying not to remember. Quiet, almost polite, like something settling into place. Her mother doesn't come back up. Both parents are gone, never to return. Tanya doesn't scream. She can't. Her legs finally move on their own, not toward the stairs but toward the closet. Door pulled shut, breath held, eyes pressed to the narrow gap between the slats. Downstairs, the footsteps move slowly, unhurried, cataloging what's left in the room. Toward the closet. Headlights sweep the front windows. A car door. The front door bursts open. Uncle James moves in tactical formation toward the back of the house. One leg over the sill and he's inside the room. Tanya is filled with relief. They escape through the back door. "My dad. My mom. I think they might need an ambulance." Uncle James gripped the steering wheel harder. "I'm sorry." Tanya turned toward the window. She didn't cry. Not yet. Her phone began ringing. Uncle James glanced at it. "Don't answer that." "Who is it?" "I said don't." The phone stopped, then rang again. Uncle James reached over and switched it off. Tanya looked at him. "You knew this would happen." He didn't deny it. "I knew someone might come looking." "Who?" Uncle James kept driving. "Your father never told you?" "Told me what?" He said nothing. And that silence was the first question Tanya carried out of that night. What had her father done? By sunrise, Tanya no longer existed, at least not on paper. Uncle James had spent years building contacts he had never expected to use. A passport, a new name, a new history, a new destination far away from all the chaos. Seoul. Tanya stood in an airport bathroom staring at herself in the mirror. Her hair was the same. Her eyes were the same. But the name printed on the documents in her hand belonged to someone who had never existed. Uncle James had given her instructions 3 times. Never contact anyone from home. Never use an old number. Never search for your father's name online. And above all, do not put that old SIM card into a phone. Tanya nodded. She understood. But understanding something and accepting it were not the same thing. Uncle James stood outside the bathroom door. "You have to go." She opened the door. "Why Seoul?" "Because I have someone there." "Who?" "Someone who doesn't need to know who you really are." Tanya stared at him. "How long will I have to stay?" Uncle James's expression changed. "Until I know it's safe." "And when will that be?" He didn't answer. That was the second question, and Tanya was beginning to realize that the adults around her had far more answers than they were willing to give her. Seoul did not look like a hiding place, and that was what frightened Tanya most about it. The city was bright, crowded, alive. Nobody knew her. Nobody looked twice. She rented a small apartment, unpacked 2 suitcases, and placed the photograph of her parents inside the top drawer of her nightstand. She didn't put it on the wall. She wasn't ready to look at them every morning. Her new life began quietly. An English classroom, a stack of lesson plans, a handful of children who knew her only by the name on the attendance sheet. For the first time since the attack, Tanya had something that looked almost like normal. She was good at teaching. That was why she noticed Min-ho. He sat in the back of the classroom, arms folded, book closed. He had already decided he wasn't participating. Tanya stopped beside his desk. "Open the book." "No." She waited. He looked up. "You know who my uncle is?" "No." He almost smiled. "You should." "Maybe." That surprised him. She pointed at the book. "Page 42. "I'm not doing it." "Then we'll sit here until you decide to." He stared at her. She stared back. 5 seconds. 10. Finally, he opened the book. Tanya walked away. From the hallway, a man had watched the entire exchange. One man with quite a reputation in Seoul. Everyone around him seemed on edge, and some even smiled too much in his presence, whether for his reputation or his connections. Yeung had expected the usual reaction. He assumed Tanya wouldn't even notice him until she finished helping Min-ho. Then she stood. Their eyes met. Yeung waited for recognition. There was none. "Mr. Yeung," another teacher said nervously. Tanya picked up her papers. "Min-ho has homework." She locked eyes with him. Yeung looked at his nephew, then back at her. "You know who I am?" Tanya adjusted the papers in her arms. "Should I?" The teacher beside him looked horrified and tried to signal Tanya to stay quiet. "Miss Hyun, is everything okay?" Tanya asked, noticing the teacher's unease. Yeung couldn't hide his begrudging admiration. For the first time in years, someone had spoken to him without fear, and he found himself wanting to know why. Min-ho's behavior didn't improve immediately. During an after-hours tutoring session, he pushed the book away. "Why does it matter?" Tanya looked at him. "Because you need to learn it. My mom isn't here to see it anyway." There it was, the wound beneath the behavior. Tanya crouched beside him. "I know." Min-ho looked away. "But you don't get to quit on yourself because something unfair happened to you." He swallowed. "You don't understand." "No." Tanya's voice softened. "I understand more than you think." She didn't tell him why. She didn't tell him about the closet, the gunfire, the blood, the two people she would never see again. Instead, she tapped the page. Again. Min-ho looked at her, then slowly picked up the pencil. Neither of them noticed Yeung standing outside the door. He had come early, unsure of what he'd seen the other day, but impressed. And he had heard everything. Something changed in his expression. Not attraction. Not yet. Something more dangerous. Respect. When the lesson ended, Yeung waited for Tanya in the hallway. "For your time." He held out an envelope. Tanya glanced at it. "No. I don't need to be paid extra. I'm already being paid for this job." He seemed genuinely confused. "You haven't opened it." "I don't need to. It's for Min-ho. He needs books, practice, someone willing to sit with him. I can pay for that." "I know." She pushed the envelope gently back toward him. "That's why I'm saying no." Yeung looked at her. "Everyone has a price." "Then you've been talking to the wrong people." Infuriated by his remark, she picked up her bag. "Have a great day." She walked away. Yeung stood alone in the hallway. He looked at the envelope in his hand. Nobody had ever refused him that plainly, and somehow that wasn't what bothered him. What bothered him was that he wanted to see her again. That night, Tanya sat alone in her apartment. Rain tapped against the window. She opened the drawer. The old SIM card was still there, wrapped inside a sock. She stared at it. Uncle James had told her never to use it. Never. Tanya closed the drawer, walked away, stopped, returned. She picked it up. I just need one number. Feeling homesick, she wanted to reach out to an old friend. Her hand trembled. For several seconds, she held the SIM above the slot, then inserted it. The phone searched for a signal. Nothing. Tanya exhaled. Then signal found. Her eyes widened. She dialed. 1 ring. 2. 3. Then the call connected. Hello. Tanya couldn't speak. The voice on the other end was someone she hadn't heard in years. Tanya. She closed her eyes. It's me. Across the world, a laptop chimed. Uncle James looked at the screen. His expression changed immediately. A signal he had spent years hoping never to see. He stood. No, she's been compromised. He checked the location again. Seoul. Uncle James grabbed the bag that had been packed and waiting for years. He didn't call Tanya. He couldn't. If he could see the signal, someone else could too. And somewhere else, in a room Tanya had never seen, a laptop displayed the same location. B2 stared at the screen. Seoul. He leaned back. The search was over. The girl he had failed to eliminate that night had just told him exactly where she was. He closed the laptop. Then he stood. This time he wasn't coming to search. He was coming to finish the job. Before he left, B2 opened a drawer and took out a single photograph. Tanya's family, years younger, laughing at something none of them would remember. He wasn't driven by anger. He had never needed to be. This was a job he'd left unfinished, and men in his line of work did not leave things unfinished. He returned the photograph to the drawer, closed it, and picked up his bag. Uncle James moved through the Seoul airport without stopping. He had landed less than an hour ago. He carried one bag. No checked luggage. No unnecessary electronics. No calls. The signal from Tanya's old SIM had already gone dark. That should have relieved him. Didn't. Because Uncle James knew what Tanya didn't. A signal disappearing after only a few seconds didn't mean the phone was safe. It meant someone had already found it. He stepped outside and looked across the traffic. Seoul moved around him as if nothing had happened. People hurried toward trains. Taxis pulled away from the curb. Phones rang. Nobody knew that somewhere in the city, a woman who had been hiding for years had just reopened a door she'd been warned never to touch. Uncle James pulled out a second phone. He made one call. Find her. A pause. Quietly, he ended the call. Tanya woke the next morning feeling good. Unaware she had opened a can of worms. The phone was still on the table. The SIM was still inside. Nothing had happened. No strange calls. No knock at the door. Everything is normal, she told herself. She almost laughed at herself. Maybe Uncle James had been overly cautious. Maybe the past really was finished. Then she noticed something outside her window. A man across the street. Dark coat. Standing beside a parked car. He wasn't looking directly at her apartment, and that was what made her uncomfortable. He was looking at the building opposite. Tanya watched him for several seconds. He walked away. She stepped back from the window. Her heart was beating faster. She didn't know why. She told herself it was nothing. But she had learned something on the night her parents died. Fear didn't always arrive screaming. Sometimes it stood quietly across the street. Blocks away, B2 sat in a parked car, unbothered by the distance. He wasn't ready to move yet. He was cataloging her mornings, her walking pace, the 2 minutes she paused at the corner bakery before turning toward the school. Attacking now would be sloppy. He didn't do sloppy. The school, Minho was waiting for her. I did the homework. Tanya stopped. All of it. He held up the workbook proudly. Almost. She smiled. That's progress. My uncle said you're helping me too much. Your uncle says a lot. Minho grinned. Then his expression changed. Are you staying? Tanya looked at him. At the school? No. He hesitated. Here. The question landed harder than he intended. Tanya crouched beside him. I'm not planning to disappear. It was a promise she hadn't meant to make. Minho nodded, then whispered, Good. Neither of them noticed the gray sedan parked beyond the school gates. Inside it, B2 watched the building. He had already learned two things: Tanya's schedule and the location of her apartment. He had also photographed Yeung with Tanya on 2 occasions. Both times, Yeung was trying to impress her with his wealth and elegance. B2 studied a photograph of Yeung, then another, then Tanya. He wasn't interested in the subtle budding romance. He was interested in leverage. If Tanya had built a new life, then breaking the people around her would make her easier to reach. But B2 had learned from experience, pressure worked best when the target didn't know it was pressure. So he didn't approach her. Not yet. He would simply make the world around her smaller. That afternoon, Tanya stayed late at school. She was sorting papers when she heard footsteps behind her. She turned. Juwon stood in the doorway. You work too much, and I know how little your pay is. He smiled. Still refusing my money? Still offering it? She said nonchalantly. Perhaps. Tanya returned to her papers. Then perhaps we're both stubborn. Juwon walked inside. He placed a coffee on the desk. I remembered how you take it. She looked at the cup, then at him. You've been paying attention. I have. There was no clever answer to that. Tanya looked away first. Juwon didn't push, and that was becoming the problem. He wasn't trying to impress her anymore. He wasn't demanding her attention. He was simply there, ready whenever she needed him. And Tanya was beginning to notice that she liked having him there. Thank you for the work you're doing for my nephew, Juwon said. Tanya could barely answer before her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She froze. Juwon noticed. The screen stopped ringing. Tanya didn't answer. A second later, a message appeared. Tanya, I hope you are enjoying your coffee. It read. Her face drained. Juwon looked at her. What happened? She locked the screen. Nothing. He knew she was lying. He just didn't know why. Seated atop a skyscraper across the street, B2 set down his phone and his binoculars. The message had been simple. Not a threat. Not yet. He was good at what he did, patient, precise, and waiting for the moment he could take her out without leaving a trace. The way he always had. B2 stood and walked toward the window. Below him, the city stretched endlessly. He had spent years finding people who believed distance was protection. It never was. The question was no longer whether he could reach Tanya. The question was how much of her new life he would have to take apart before she stopped running. That evening, Tanya took a different route home, doubling back more than once along the way. Halfway down the street, she noticed footsteps behind her. She stopped. The footsteps stopped. She turned. A delivery worker pushed a cart around the corner. Nobody else. Tanya continued walking. At the next intersection, she looked behind her again. The street was empty. She reached her apartment, unlocked the door, stepped inside, then stopped. Something was wrong. Nothing looked disturbed. Nothing was missing. But the photograph on her nightstand was turned face down, and Tanya hadn't left it that way. She walked toward it slowly. Her hand hovered over the frame. Then she noticed something underneath it. A small piece of paper. No name. A message. Just 3 words. Happy death anniversary. Tanya stopped breathing. Then it dawned on her it was the exact same day years ago that her parents were eliminated. She shed a quiet tear. Whoever had found her knew exactly who she was, and if they knew about her parents, they might know why or who had taken them. Uncle James was still in his motel when his phone rang. He answered immediately. Where? A voice gave him an address. Uncle James closed his eyes. How certain? Very. He grabbed his coat. Then the voice continued. We also found something else. Uncle James stopped. What? A name. Silence. Whose? The man who eliminated them. Uncle James's face hardened. B2. The name alone brought back the house. The gunfire. Tanya's father. Tanya hiding in the closet. Uncle James opened the motel door, then paused. For years, he had told himself that if B2 ever found Tanya, he would be ready. Now that moment had arrived, and Uncle James realized something he hadn't expected. He was afraid, not for himself, for her. The next morning, Tanya almost didn't go to school. She stood in front of the mirror, thinking. She considered disappearing again. A new name, new clothes, a new city. For a second she said it out loud, that a new city wouldn't mend her past or change her face. If the people who had taken her parents could afford a plane ticket across continents to Seoul, then running wasn't the answer because they would always find her. It had to end one way, she thought. Then she remembered Min-ho and the way he had looked when he asked if she was staying. She picked up her bag. She went to school. Ju-won, who had made it a habit to arrive early for school pickup so he could spend a few minutes with Tanya, noticed immediately that something was different. You didn't sleep. I'm fine. No. Tanya looked at him. You don't know me well enough to say that. Maybe not. He paused. But I know what someone looks like when they're pretending. She almost told him. The words came close, then stopped. She couldn't risk it. Not yet. Ju-won didn't force her. Instead, he asked, Do you trust me? Tanya looked away. I don't know. That's fair. He stepped back. Tanya, I don't care what's making you uneasy. Just understand. I have the resources to make problems disappear, no matter who or what they are. He added, You don't owe me trust because I asked for it. That answer stayed with her long after he left. Later that day, Min-ho was waiting outside the school, watching the street. Tanya noticed. What are you looking at? He pointed. That car. A gray sedan sat across the road. Why? I've seen it before. Tanya's expression changed. Where? Here. When? He thought. Monday. Tanya looked at the car. Anything else? Same guy. Her nerves tightened. Are you sure? Min-ho shrugged. He always sits there. Then the car moved slowly and passed the school. Tanya watched it disappear. For the first time, the threat had a witness who wasn't supposed to matter, a child. And that made it matter even more. That night, Uncle James finally reached Tanya's street. Not by phone. He stood across from her apartment. He didn't approach immediately. He watched. Then he saw Tanya step outside. Uncle James almost called her name. He stopped. Someone else was watching the building. A man standing beside a parked car. Uncle James recognized the posture before he recognized the face. His hand moved toward his weapon. B2. Uncle James stepped backward. B2 looked directly at him. For 1 second, neither man moved. Then B2 smiled, not because he was happy. It's a blessed day. 2 heads for the price of 1, he said, having just found the last person standing between himself and Tanya in his estimation. Little did he know. Uncle James turned and walked away, drawing him away from Tanya's building. B2 took the bait. He followed, not quickly, moving at his usual unhurried pace, but tactical this time. The alley was empty. Uncle James heard footsteps behind him. He turned. B2 stood at the entrance. You should have stayed home. Uncle James raised his weapon. You should have finished the job years ago. B2's expression didn't change. I thought I did. Uncle James fired. B2 moved. The shot struck brick. Then they collided. The fight was fast, brutal. Uncle James landed a punch that split B2's lip. For the first time, the assassin's expression changed. Then B2 drove Uncle James into the wall. Uncle James reached for his weapon. Too late. The gunshot echoed through the alley. Uncle James collapsed. B2 stood over him. He could have fired again. Then sirens sounded in the distance. B2 looked toward the street and stepped back. Before disappearing, he looked down at Uncle James. "You should have stayed out of this." Then he vanished. At the hospital, doctors fought to keep Uncle James alive. Tanya knew none of it. She was sitting in her apartment, staring at her phone. It buzzed. "Juwon, you disappeared quickly today. Are you okay?" She typed, "I'm fine." Deleted it. Typed again, "Something feels wrong." She sent it. Juwon replied almost immediately, "Where are you?" Tanya stared at the message. Then another appeared, "Don't go anywhere. I'm coming." She almost smiled. Then the lights in her apartment flickered. Once, twice. Tanya looked toward the door. A sound came from the hallway. Footsteps. She didn't move. The footsteps stopped outside her apartment. Silence. Then 3 slow knocks. Tanya's hand moved toward the drawer where she kept the weapon Uncle James had insisted she learn to use. Another knock. She reached for the handle, then stopped, because something on the floor caught her eye. A shadow beneath the door. Someone was standing outside, and whoever it was wasn't knocking anymore. Tanya stared at the shadow beneath the door. Her hand remained on the drawer. The shadow didn't move. Neither did she. Then her phone vibrated. "Juwon, open the door for me." Tanya's eyes narrowed. She typed, "Where are you?" The answer came immediately, "Outside your building." Her blood went cold. She looked back at the shadow, then at the phone. If Juwon was outside, who was standing at her door? Tanya stepped away from the entrance. The shadow disappeared. No footsteps. No elevator. Nothing. She waited. 10 seconds. 20. Then her phone rang. Unknown number. She answered without speaking. A man's voice came through. "I left a package for you outside your apartment." In the alley. Tanya froze, not knowing B2 was referring to Uncle James's nearly lifeless body. "You eliminated my dad." "He knew what was coming," B2 replied. "You eliminated my mother." "That wasn't the objective," B2 said flatly. Tanya's grip tightened around the phone. "What was?" Silence. Then, "Your father took something that didn't belong to him." The call ended. Tanya stood completely still. Her father hadn't simply been targeted because of an old military grudge. He had taken something B2 had been sent to recover. And if B2 had finally found Tanya, whatever her father had hidden might still exist. Juwon reached her apartment moments later. Tanya opened the door only after checking through the peephole. He stepped inside. "What's happening?" She looked at him. "I think the man who eliminated my parents just called me." Juwon's expression changed. "Who? What do you mean?" His tone had turned sharp, protective, for the first time letting his true mafia instincts show. B2. The name meant nothing to him. Not yet. Tanya explained everything: the attack, her father's military background, Uncle James, the new identity, the messages, the car, then the call. Juwon listened without interrupting. When she finished, he asked one question. "What did your father take?" "I don't know." "Are you sure?" Tanya looked at him. "No." That was the first honest answer she had given herself in years. "I think my father left something behind." Juwon looked toward the apartment. "Then we find it before he does. I'll arrange a self-contained penthouse for you, off-grid. You'll be untouchable there. This is my city. Nothing moves without my knowledge unless I'm not paying attention." Tanya shook her head. "No." He frowned. "I'm done running," she said. That was the moment everything changed. Later that night, alone in his family's office, Juwon couldn't stop thinking about the name Tanya had given him. B2. He pulled old contractor files his father kept. Men his father had hired over the years for security jobs no one asked questions about. One record stopped him. A payment, an alias, a photograph. He didn't recognize the face, but something about it matched what Tanya had described. His father's organization hadn't ordered what happened to her parents. The dates proved that. But at some point, without knowing who or what B2 really was, they had once paid him for work of their own. At the hospital, Uncle James woke to the sound of a monitor. His body felt like it had been dropped from a building. A nurse noticed his eyes open. "Don't move." Uncle James ignored her. "Tanya." The nurse frowned. "Who?" "My daughter." The nurse reached for the phone. Uncle James caught her wrist. "Don't call her." He struggled to breathe. "Not until I know she's safe." Tanya and Juwon searched the apartment, drawers, closets, bookshelves. Nothing. Then Tanya remembered something. Her father had once told her, "If I ever tell you that something is gone, don't believe me." She had thought it was strange at the time. Now it sounded like a warning. She went to the photograph of her parents and pulled it from the frame. Nothing. She examined the back. A tiny indentation. She pressed it. The frame opened. Inside was a thin memory card, wrapped in a slip of paper. On it, in her father's handwriting, "For your eyes only." Tanya stared at it. "What is that?" "My father." She swallowed. "He left it for me." Juwon looked at the card. "Do you know what's on it?" "No." "Then let's find out." He connected it to a laptop. The screen remained black for several seconds. Then a file appeared. One video. No title. No date. Tanya clicked it. Her father's face appeared older, tired. Tanya's breath caught. "If you're watching this," he said, "then they found you. But don't worry, sweetie. Uncle James will be there to protect you. Listen to him and do whatever he tells you to do." Tanya covered her mouth. Her father's voice continued. "I knew the people I crossed would eventually come for me. What I didn't know was whether they'd come after you." He paused, then went on. "They called it a staffing agency. Overseas jobs that never existed. People went in and never came out the other side." The video paused, then continued. "I spent years believing the only way to protect my daughter was to keep her ignorant." Tanya's eyes filled. "I was wrong." A folder appeared on screen, names, payments, photographs, dates, operations, and finally B2. Tanya stared at the screen. Her father's voice returned. "The man called B2 was not the one who ordered my death." Juwon leaned closer. "He was the weapon." Tanya looked at him. "Then who gave the order?" Her father's voice answered before either of them could speak. "If you're seeing this, you already know the answer is inside the final file." The video ended. The laptop displayed one locked folder, marked simply Authority. Tanya reached toward it, then stopped. A message appeared on the screen. "Access requires a second key." Juwon looked at her. "What second key?" Tanya's face changed. "Uncle James." By now, word had reached them of Uncle James's confrontation with B2. They reached the hospital before sunrise. Uncle James was awake, barely. When Tanya entered his room, he looked at her for a long moment, then smiled. "You found it." Tanya stopped. "You knew. Your father trusted me with the second key. Why didn't you tell me?" "Because knowing the truth would have put you in danger." Tanya's voice hardened. "I was already in danger." Uncle James looked down. "I know." He reached beneath his pillow and pulled out a small metal key. Tanya stared at it. "My father gave you that?" "Years ago. Why didn't you use it? Because he told me only to give it to you when you were ready. Tanya took the key. She looked at Uncle James. Am I ready? Uncle James smiled weakly. No. He looked toward Juwon. But I think you're done waiting to be. The key opened the folder. The documents inside were enough to destroy more than B2. They connected him to a private network, human trafficking dressed up as overseas job placement, arms trafficking on the side, and every dollar laundered through legitimate businesses. And at the center was one name, the man who had ordered Tanya's father's death, a powerful figure who had spent years protected by money and influence. Tanya stared at the screen. He sent B2. Uncle James nodded. Your father discovered what they were doing. What? People who disappeared. Operations that were never supposed to exist. Your father found the records. Juwon read through the files. These are enough to expose all of them. Not if they're dead, Uncle James said. Tanya looked at him. What do you mean? B2 will destroy the evidence if he realizes you have it. Tanya thought about the message, the car, the apartment, the phone call. Then she understood. He wants me to run. Uncle James nodded. Because he knows what people do when they're afraid. Tanya closed the laptop. Then let's make him think I'm afraid. Back at the hospital, the three of them worked through what they actually knew. Not guesses. Facts. Minho had seen the same gray car outside the school twice. Always parked in the same spot, always the same driver. Tanya remembered something else. Her father had once told her B2 never moved without watching first, sometimes for days. He watches before he moves, she said. If we give him a reason to think he finally has a clean shot, he'll take it. Uncle James, propped against the pillows, nodded slowly. Then we make sure we're the ones ready for him, not the other way around. For the next 48 hours, Tanya changed nothing. That was the trick. She went to school. She taught Minho. She met Juwon for coffee. On one date, his bodyguards, dressed as waiters, quietly watched over the restaurant the whole time, though Tanya had no idea. Juwon wasn't taking any chances. She walked home. She behaved exactly as she always had. But underneath the ordinary routine, everything was calculated. The evidence was copied. The originals were secured. The police were quietly brought in through a contact Juwon trusted. And Tanya became bait. The only thing B2 didn't know was that she had stopped being his target. She had become the person hunting him. Minho noticed something first. You're acting weird. Tanya smiled. That's a serious accusation. You keep checking windows. She stopped. Children noticed everything adults thought they missed. Do you remember that gray car? Minho nodded. Have you seen it? Not today. Tanya's expression tightened. Good. Minho looked at her. Are you leaving? No. You promised. Tanya crouched in front of him. I meant it. He hugged her unexpectedly. Tanya closed her eyes. For the first time, she understood exactly what she was fighting for. Not revenge. Not her father's name. A life where people didn't have to disappear because someone powerful decided they should. That evening, the trap began. Tanya left the school carrying a small case. B2 saw it exactly as planned. The case appeared to contain the original evidence. Tanya drove alone. She didn't know how long B2 would follow. She didn't have to. He had already decided. The road narrowed. The city lights disappeared behind her. Tanya pulled into an abandoned industrial building. She stepped out. Waited. Nothing. Then, a voice behind her. You've made this difficult. Tanya turned. B2 stood in the darkness. Exactly as she remembered him. Calm, controlled. The same man from the night her life ended. You eliminated my parents. I did. Tanya's jaw tightened. You don't even deny it. I don't lie about my work. What did my father do? B2 studied her. He refused to stay silent. That's why you eliminated him? No. B2 stepped closer. He tried to expose men who could not afford to be exposed. Tanya looked at him. And you? I was paid to make sure he didn't. She stared at him, then asked, Did you know I was in the house? B2 paused. That pause told her everything. You knew. I knew. Then why didn't you eliminate me? I could have, but for your father's overzealous friend Uncle James. B2's expression darkened. Providence has given me another opportunity. I won't miss this time, he said calmly. Tanya's eyes hardened. So you left me alive? Plainly, yes, B2 said. You think I spent years running from what my father left behind? Tanya said. No. I spent years believing his enemies were the only thing that defined me. She looked at him steadily. That's not true anymore. That was your mistake. B2's eyes narrowed. Something about her stillness. Real fear doesn't stand this straight. His hand moved toward his jacket. Then the sirens came and it didn't matter anymore. B2's eyes shifted. Tanya smiled. He realized it, the case, the location, the entire meeting. A trap. You didn't come alone. No. B2 reached for his weapon. Tanya moved first. She slammed his wrist against the vehicle. The gun fell. B2 struck her hard enough to send her against the car. He moved toward the weapon. Uncle James couldn't stop himself from gesticulating while on his wheelchair. Run, Tanya, run, he shouted. B2 stopped. Juwon appeared behind him. Police vehicles flooded the entrance. B2 looked around. For the first time, there was nowhere to go. He lunged toward Tanya anyway. She stepped aside. B2 stumbled. Juwon caught his wrist, twisted it, and drove him to the ground. The police rushed forward. Handcuffs snapped shut. B2 looked up at her. You think this changes anything? Tanya stared down at him. No. She paused. It changes me. Juwon crouched beside him. You worked for my family once, didn't you? B2 said nothing, but Juwon already had his answer. It was a truth he'd carry long after this moment ended. Right now, though, nothing mattered more than the woman standing over him. The arrest didn't end with B2. The evidence led investigators directly to the man who had ordered the original attack. His businesses were raided. Accounts were frozen. Records were seized. Men who had spent years believing themselves untouchable suddenly discovered that evidence did not care how powerful they were. The case became international. Minho asked to come to the trial. He didn't sit with his uncle. He sat beside Tanya, arms crossed the same way they'd been the first day she met him. Except this time, it wasn't defiance. It was loyalty. Tanya was called as the key witness. She stood in the courtroom, hand on the Bible, and looked directly at both men seated across from her. State your name for the record. Tanya. Her real name spoken out loud, for the first time in years. She testified about the house, the closet, the gap in the slats, what she saw, and who she saw do it. Her voice didn't shake. During a recess, the man who had ordered it all approached her in the hallway. Flanked by lawyers, still composed even in defeat. You should have stayed hidden, he said. It would have been kinder. Tanya looked at him without flinching. Kindness was never yours to give. It's why you're here, and I'm not hiding anymore. He said nothing. B2 was convicted. So was the man who had ordered the hit. Both received the maximum sentence. Tanya didn't attend the sentencing for revenge. She attended because she wanted to see the door close. For years, she had lived as if someone else owned the rest of her life. That ended in that courtroom. Uncle James survived. But the bullet had done what B2 couldn't finish. He would never walk again. The first time Tanya saw him sit up in that hospital bed, wheelchair waiting beside it, she braced for anger, for grief. Instead, he smiled at her. "I'm still here." Tanya sat beside him. "You didn't have to be." "Yes, I did." He looked at her steadily. "Your father trusted me with you. That doesn't end because my legs did." Tanya took his hand. "He loved you. He loved you more." For the first time, neither of them was running. A few weeks later, blunt in the way only a kid can be, Minho told his uncle exactly what he thought. "You should marry her," he said. "You're happier now. I like her more than anyone you've ever brought around." Juwon laughed, caught off guard, and didn't argue. Months passed. The tutoring center Tanya had once dreamed about finally opened. Not because Juwon funded it, not because his family name made it possible. Tanya built it herself. Juwon helped when she asked. Only when she asked. One evening, he stood beside her outside the finished building. "You did it." "We did." He smiled. "No." Tanya looked at him. "You did." She smiled. "Maybe." Juwon reached for her hand. "There's something I've wanted to ask you." Tanya raised an eyebrow. "What?" He pulled a ring from his pocket. For once, the woman who had faced B2 without flinching didn't know what to say. Juwon laughed softly. "You can say no." Tanya looked at the ring, then at him. "I spent years letting other people decide where I would go." She took his hand. "I'm done doing that." She smiled. "So yes." At the wedding, Tanya stood behind Uncle James's wheelchair at the top of the aisle. For years, she had walked away from everything. That day, she walked toward something and brought him with her. "Ready?" she asked. Uncle James looked ahead, toward Juwon waiting at the altar, toward Minho standing beside him, unusually serious. "Ready." She wheeled him forward, slowly, not because she was afraid, but because there was nowhere left to run. When they reached Juwon, Uncle James reached up and placed her hand in his. Then let go. Minho looked up at Tanya. "You look different." Tanya laughed. "Different how?" "Like you're not scared." She looked at Juwon, then at Uncle James, then toward the people who had become her family. "I'm not." Later that night, Tanya stood alone for a moment beneath the lights outside the reception. The city stretched around her. Seoul, the place she had once chosen because nobody knew her, the place that had become home. Her phone sat in her hand. The old SIM card was still there. She looked at it, then removed it, not because she was afraid of what it represented, but because she no longer needed it. She walked to the nearest trash bin, dropped it inside, and kept walking. No fake name, no hidden identity, no running, just Tanya, her father's daughter, her mother's child, Uncle James's family, Minho's teacher, Juwon's wife, but most importantly, herself. For years, she had believed survival meant staying one step ahead of the people hunting her. She finally understood something else. Survival was only the beginning. The real victory was waking up one morning and realizing she was no longer living the life someone else had forced upon her. And Tanya had finally reached that morning. She wasn't hiding anymore. She was not her father's unfinished war. She was not the girl who hid in that closet, or the name on a passport that never existed. She was the woman who stayed. She was home. If you've ever had to close the door on your own past, not because you made peace with all of it, but because you decided you were more than it, tell us in the comments. We'd love to hear your story. And if this one moved you, subscribe. There's more where this came from.